whatever you go through that is tough, like at least hopefully you take something out of it. I definitely take a lot out of what happened with us, and I'm continuing, and I thank Shannon for really pushing me, honestly, to open up our relationship, because I don't know where I would be right now if we hadn't done that. And it ultimately was not successful for the two of us together.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from across the entire spectrum of non-monogamy to hear their fascinating stories. We strive to bring guests on the show who have a healthy approach to non-monogamy. However, it's important to remember that everyone does it a little bit differently, and the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we produce this show for entertainment purposes only. Please be aware that we aren't doctors or therapists. Consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 210. We're Fit and Emma, and today we have an interview with Daev. Daev has previously been on the show. He was on episode 166 with his then partner Shannon, and he comes back today by himself.
Yeah, the first part of this conversation is a little bit about how their relationship transitioned and sort of what happened after our last conversation on episode 166, which you don't necessarily need to listen to, but it might be a little helpful. Yeah. But he kind of gives the backstory and talks about what happened. But the bulk of the conversation is really about what non-monogamy has looked like for him in the last 7 or 8 months, and sort of his journey into solo poly, overcoming sort of jealousy, or not necessarily overcoming it, but like working through it, and just all of the growth that has happened. And so it's a really great conversation, and we're really grateful for him, for coming back on. So thank you, Daev, for being here and for your vulnerability. We appreciate it.
Before we jump into Dave's interview, we do have a couple of quick announcements. First up, a huge thank you to our incredible Patreon community. We've had new people join this last month, and that's amazing. We're incredibly grateful again for each and every one of you. If you're looking for community, we'd love to have you come check us out. In the Patreon community, we have monthly Q&As, men's and women's groups, and an ongoing MeWe chat as well. To find out more, go to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, and click on the Patreon button.
Yeah, and if you decide to check it out and maybe it's not for you, you can cancel anytime, and we will never be hurt by that. We just want you to find your tribe, your people, and if our people aren't your people, that's okay.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
But we think our people are your people.
Probably.
But only one way to find out and prove us wrong or right.
Yes, go check it out. If you feel like Patreon might not be the best fit, we also host monthly virtual meet and greets that are open to anyone that wants to join. You just have to be open-minded. Our next virtual meet and greets are going to be we have 2 of them coming up in December. One on December 9th, that's a Thursday, and one on December 17th, that's a Friday.
I had a thought about that.
What?
Well, a lot of the people who are in our Patreon group also join the Q&As.
You mean the meet and greets?
That's what I meant.
You're going to confuse people.
Well, that's good. At least you're here to help me not confuse everybody. Uh-huh. So a lot of the people in the Patreon group join the meet and greets.
Very true.
And so if you want to maybe get a feel for like what that's going to be like, the meet and greets are a really great way to do that. It's a couple hours. It's as cheap as you want it to be. We don't charge anything, but you're welcome to make a donation.
It's pay what you want.
Pay what you want. And so we hope to see you there in December. Again, 2 opportunities to do that. No excuses for missing them. None.
No excuses.
No.
Nope. No holiday excuses.
Nope.
No. Just come join us.
They're not on Christmas.
No. Or any other holidays in December.
That we know of. We didn't fully check that out, so our apologies if we fucked that up.
I love how we just were realizing that right now.
Well, better late than never. We'll have an update for this next week.
Anyway, if you're interested in joining the virtual meet and greets, just go to our website. You know it by now, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, and click on the community events tab, and all the information is there.
If you're not down with the virtual meetings, we have started doing in-person meet and greets. We did a couple of them in October, and we have a spring tour planned for 2022. The first stop is going to be New Orleans at the beginning of February. Our meet and greet there will be February 7th. We're taking over an entire bar. It's going to be awesome. And of course, we're requiring vaccines, and we hope to see you there. We're giving you plenty of time. No reason not to be there.
Well, you're on our website. Don't forget, go to the Contact Us button, send us an email, send us a voicemail. We'd love to hear from you. You could also check out the podcast tab. We have show notes for every single episode that we've published with pictures of our guests and links to all the resources that are mentioned. So I think that's it.
That is all of it. We get it. We got it.
Yeah, let's go talk.
We get it. We got it. We're falling apart. Let's get out of here before we fall apart completely.
Let's go talk to Dave.
Welcome back to the show, Dave. We're excited to be talking again. It's been about a year since we talked to you last. And last time we talked to you, you were here with your partner, Shannon. Today, you're flying solo, and we're going to hear all about that and where you've been the last year, what's been going on. And we're excited to have you back. Thanks for reaching back out and for coming back on.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be back.
Yeah. Well, we know a little bit about you because we talked to you last time, but for anybody who maybe hasn't listened to episode 166 or doesn't know who you are, do you want to introduce yourself and maybe a little bit of your background, and we can kind of do a short abridged version of up to a year ago, and then we can kind of pick it up a year ago.
Sure. So yeah, the last time I was on was really almost exclusively talking about backgrounds. So I definitely don't want to get too much into that. But yeah, I'm 43 years old. I have been in non-monogamous relationships in one form or another since I think 2014, so about 7 years, which was at the point where I left a monogamous relationship and started dating, and then met my ex-wife. My partner that I was on with before, we had gotten together in January of 2019, and we met under auspicious circumstances in an informal and messy throuple that we met on Jam Cruise. We talked a lot about that. I was on it with a different partner, and then met Shannon, and then tried to make a triad work with one of the partners being long distance, and that quickly fell apart and taught me some valuable lessons about expectations and not having expectations for things to work when not everybody's on board. Shannon and I had a little bit of a tumultuous relationship over 2.5 years, I guess. We talked a bit about that when we were on, that we kind of had a pattern of breaking up and getting back together. And when we were on last, we were diving into, we had not been monogamous from the time that we had gotten together, but we were a few months into opening up completely and not just being ethically non-monogamous in a sexual standpoint, playing with others, and more allowing other relationships to develop and dating separately. So going full polyamorous was where we were at when we were on last.
Yeah, sort of you were just about to jump off into the deep end with it. And
right.
And when you said your relationship was monogamous from the beginning up until that point.
No, non-monogamous.
Yeah.
You said non-monogamous?
Yeah.
Okay, I heard monogamous, and I was like, well, apart from the throuple, but that makes a lot more sense. Maybe I misheard. I apologize. But like you said, that was largely more of a swinging, casual encounters kind of dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked a lot about all the threesomes that we were having with her friends. Which was why I was surprised when you said monogamous. Yeah.
I was like,
definitely not.
I didn't know threesomes didn't count anymore. Okay, well, that makes a lot more sense. So I think, go ahead, Emma. Sorry.
No, it's all good. Thanks for that brief introduction. And I think it makes the most sense to pick up like about a year ago and let you talk about your journey and what you'd like to share. And
before we started recording, you talked a little bit about wanting to lay a groundwork about, obviously Shannon is not joining you here on the podcast. And so that's probably going to come up, and how you want to sort of approach this conversation. So we wanted
Sure.
to give you the opportunity to kind of lay that foundation for us and for everybody else as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to be very conscious of the fact that she's not here to defend herself. And as I was expressing to you, I'm very nervous about this interview because I really don't want to come across as just being negative and bashing the things that happened or the things that she did, although I do have very strong feelings about a lot of things, obviously. And I just want to kind of preface my telling the story of what happened over the next 6 months after we spoke last by saying, please reserve judgment until the end, because I know in my mind, especially coming from my perspective, I know that she's not going to come across in the best light, but she obviously has her side of the story as well. And I think that the end result, after all is said and done, is actually really positive, and I'm reaching a place where I am forgiving and letting go of a lot of my anger about the way that things happened. So just don't judge too harshly until we get to the end, I guess.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Thanks for that disclaimer, clarification.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So picking up where we left off, I think that we were, really about to. We had started dating separately at that point. I remember that she had really just gone through her first experience of dating someone and having to break up with someone. So that's kind of, and then we were about to. I remember we were about to have our first experience separating with a couple that we had been dating together.
Yep.
Yeah.
And having our first experience kind of like splitting up with another established couple and swapping separately. So we really continued to have a lot of growing pains in that process. I would not say that we ever really reached a point where things were smooth at all. One of the things that I will say that I think was a big problem with how it worked and how it happened was, I mentioned in our last interview that I was really adamant that if we were going to go this route, that we needed to put some serious work into it. I was reading a lot of books. I was listening to a lot of podcasts. And I don't really feel like she ever met me there completely. For example, I think that in the time that I read 3 books about polyamory, she just read The Ethical Slut. So I think that there was a inequity in how much work we were putting in, and I think that ultimately was one of the major factors in what led to it not working for us. Because I think we hit some pretty common roadblocks, some pretty common issues that I was more prepared for overcoming than she was, because I was doing that work from the people that had come before us and taking the time to write books about it.
Are you open to sharing what maybe some of those were and how you navigated them, and even knowing that there was some disparity in
Talking about the roadblocks, not the books.
Yeah, and please tell us how you read a book, Dave. That's what I was trying to get at.
The specific books.
I actually got, quickly, like there is that was a challenge for me that I was pretty proud of overcoming, because it's been a long time since I've been able to read really consistently. I was a voracious reader when I was young, and then in my adult life, I've really gotten out of the habit, and for many years tried to okay, I'm going to read books, and I would try to read at bedtime, and I would fall asleep as soon as I'd start reading. I actually in the COVID times, I developed some really, really positive habits and got rid of some really negative habits in my life. And one of them was I started going in the hot tub every night and reading for 30 or 45 minutes. How did I read a book? It was actually, there's a real story there.
and that's why I asked And that's why I asked the question, Emma.
No, I wasn't making fun of your question. I was clarifying. I thought you were asking the type of books.
No, I know.
Or not the type, the name of the books. Anyway, I digress. Let's go back to the question.
Sure. How did I? What were some of the things that I'm talking about that were navigated differently between the two of us? I mean, jealousy first and foremost, right? There was a disparity in how we were both approaching each other's relationships. That caused a lot of friction. I feel like every relationship that I tried to start, there was always a problem with it in Shannon's mind. And so I feel like a lot of those problems were not real problems. They were being created just out of her jealousy and her trying to figure out how to deal with these emotions. I'll say it seemed to me like there was always a small issue blown up to a large issue. Like
Sure.
I would, really try very hard to communicate and be honest in my communication and share everything that was going on. And there was always like but you slipped up and you gave this detail incorrectly, right? Like I'd tell the truth about the fact that I had gone out with someone and I'd had sex with someone and all of the big stuff. And then I would be accused of being a liar and being dishonest because I had said, we started texting last Tuesday. And she had said, I thought it was last Wednesday. Things like that. Like,
Right. And so things that are normally small, I mean, and to be fair, right, like this is a hard thing we're navigating right now. Monogamy in general is difficult, and poly is difficult, and jealousy is difficult. And so, yeah, I think it is easy to take those things. And I'm not trying to like pick sides, but just that it is difficult, and it is easy to see little things and say, oh, well, there's an inconsistency. What else am I not hearing? Right. Like I know how easy that leap is to make. So yeah, those are really hard to navigate. And then it's equally frustrating on your end, right? Like that you feel like everything is wrong. So I
right. Like I've told you all of the big stuff that like, a normal partner would be upset about, but we're being honest about that. Right. Or a monogamous partner, I guess I should say, not normal, because we aren't normalizing non-monogamy. So I felt really attacked quite often because I was like, look, I'm doing these things right. I feel like, and I'm sorry I made a mistake about the date or the time that a conversation started or something along those lines. It wasn't malicious. It was a mistake. So let's not extrapolate that mistake to everything that I'm telling you is now a lie.
Right.
There were little things like, so like I had one partner that I started to date that she was jealous because we weren't having sex right away. And I think that threatened her because she, was like, well, why are you interested in this woman if it's not even a sexual relationship? And I was like, well, I'm trying to build things beyond that right now. And, I don't have to have sex with every person right away that I'm dating. I'm trying to build more important things than that. And then I had another partner that, we were trying to navigate. We were both going to be trying to date her, but there was a difference in communication and how often we were communicating. And so trying to navigate, like, how does that work? Mm-hmm. Do we both start? And I still don't really understand that. I still haven't navigated that successfully. Do you, when you want to each have a relationship with this new person and a relationship together, or at least explore all of those things and see what's going to work and what's not? How do you make that work when one person likes to text more than the other? So there, and then there was a lot of jealousy over that and just communication. And then there was a whole partner that just the relationship just got completely sabotaged because of a minor miscommunication of timing. Like I said, I was talking to her this day, or it was really actually this day. So overall, we were just going through these real struggles where everyone that I tried to date, there was some reason for it to be wrong. There was something to be upset about. There was some issue to be had with it. And on the flip side, I feel like I was doing a much better job of allowing her the freedom to start to have her own relationships. Not that I wasn't dealing with the same jealousy issues. I was just focused on dealing with them more appropriately, right? And understanding that they were my feelings and my issues to deal with, and she wasn't doing anything wrong. She was only doing what we had agreed to.
Right. Does
that answer your question?
So, yes, it does. So, unless you have, there's so many, there's so many things, right? Like it could go down so many paths. How long did you two try to make it work?
Well, so we got back together and opened up completely in September, I think, last year, and we interviewed with you guys. I don't know if I'm giving anything away behind the scenes magic. You can edit it out if I am.
No, you're good. You're good.
We interviewed with you in November, even though it didn't air until I think January, right? So there's a little bit of a lag time there.
Yeah.
We were together until April.
Okay. So about 6 months.
Yeah, 7 months. What? September, October. 8 months. 7 or 8 months.
And through that time, it was largely trying to navigate polyamory and ultimately not working out for the two of you, right? And then you've carried on sort of the journey beyond that as a, I guess, solo poly.
Yeah, well, so I'll say that. I mean, there's definitely more to the story. So I'm not,
sure. I wasn't trying to truncate it. You feel free to fill in any gaps.
Sure. Okay. So
yeah, that's it. We're done. we made it through.
We were getting some counseling as well. I had gotten a therapist, a couples therapist that specialized in poly relationships. So we were really trying to figure this stuff out, and we just kept having the same issues come up over and over again. Shannon started, so while we were having all of these issues, and I was not really finding a successful relationship because I felt like every time I did meet someone and start dating someone, there was a lot of tension with our relationship. Shannon met someone. She had a couple of missteps and false starts with people that she was meeting, and then she met someone that pretty quickly escalated to a serious place. And one of the things in the first few months of that relationship that we were talking about with our therapist was, that I was having to work through, like, okay, how do I deal with? I had figured out many years ago how to deal with any jealousy that came up around just seeing your partner with someone else or having sex with someone else. When she came home one day or one night after a date with him and told me that they had discussed and realized that they were past the point of just being friends with benefits and having actual feelings for each other, that was a new thing that I knew I was going to have to deal with. But the first time it came up, it was kind of overwhelming. So I was talking to, our therapist about that and how to deal with that. And she was saying the right things about, me still being important and wanting and valuing our relationship, not wanting to hurt us, and wanting to do it right. At the same time, I feel, like I said, one of the major issues was that she was not doing the same groundwork. And in this instance, she was not really prepared for the concept of NRE and all the things that, we know and we read about it, like how that's one of the most challenging things to go through in an open relationship is that, okay, when you meet somebody new and you're like in the throes of that new relationship energy, it's going to make everything else seem kind of dull by comparison. But you have to be prepared for the fact that That's going to happen. You're going to get through it. It's going to fade, just like, everything, it's going to get back to normal, like you're in the normal place with your current relationship, and you just have to be ready to stand by your commitments to your original partner and get through that. Okay. So I got COVID in April. It was in between vaccine shots. It was after my first shot, and for the first couple of days, I thought I was just having a really serious reaction to the vaccine shot. But I had COVID, and it was really, really bad. And we had a trip planned to Vegas. It was our first trip out of town together since COVID had started. And I had to cancel everything because I got COVID. Well, she had taken the week off of work for that trip. And then while I was really, really sick in bed, she told me that she wanted to go out of town to the mountains for her first out of town romantic getaway with her new guy. And I was like, no, that's not cool. I would have a lot of feelings to deal with the first time that this happened, no matter whatever weekend it was on. But if it was on any other weekend, I feel like I would deal with it. But the fact that you're asking me to do this weekend and asking me to deal with these feelings for the first time when I feel like I'm dying from COVID and really kind of scared and need help and need somebody to help take care of me, it really just struck me as that's really, I thought that's really selfish and kind of the last straw here with everything else that we had been dealing with. So I told her that I didn't want her to go, and she said she thought she should be able to, and that I should basically, I should be okay with it. And I was like, I'm not okay with it. So if you're going to go, I don't think you should come back. And that was that was how it ended.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. That is a very challenging end to a long journey together. I mean,
it was 2.5 years total that we were together.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
so,
not just yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot invested in there, and so yeah, I'm sorry for that. That's incredibly difficult.
Yeah. Thanks. So what I skipped over, there was a really major event that happened also during this time that I just kind of wanted to talk about, playing out of the relationship first. But my ex-wife that I talked about in the last interview, that I was still really dealing with a lot of the issues and guilt of our divorce, because I never really wanted to divorce her, but she had some really serious major issues with alcoholism and bipolar disorder, and we reached a point that I couldn't continue because she wasn't getting better, and I wasn't helping her, and she wasn't trying to get better. She passed away in January. And that was, so that was a really major trauma.
Yeah. I'm sorry for that as well. That is super hard. So I can't imagine.
And the impact that must have had on you, and then let alone you're trying to work through this relationship with Shannon too, and trying to navigate all of those emotions. 8 months is a long time, but it's not also that long. That's a lot to handle in that time.
Yeah, I agree. So I feel like I feel like there was some aspect of that being part of what happened. I think that maybe I certainly I'll take some ownership that I know from that point, from January to April, I'm sure was not the same boyfriend as I had been before, because I was then dealing with with all this emotional trauma, dealing with the grief of losing my ex-wife, which we were talking a lot. I had actually had dinner over at her place with her daughter, my stepdaughter, and her sister, right around Christmas. So just a couple of weeks before she ended up passing away. So it was, it was really traumatic, and I want to own that. I'm sure that, me going through that was part of what led to maybe Shannon diving so headfirst into this relationship with this other guy, and not wanting to put as much maybe into our relationship anymore, because I was not exactly the happiest, fun person for that period of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think appreciate that, right? That's a hard one to own. And it's a fucking hard one to go through. So yeah, again, our condolences.
Thank you.
As you mentioned, right? Like your relationship was about 2.5 years, and 8 months of that was what you kind of called the full on poly phase. And it was a tough time, but do you feel like throughout that time that you and Shannon like did experience some benefits together and grew together and took away some valuable experiences? And also you had said that, like, hold judgment till the end, that you kind of get to a better place with all of this,
Sure.
with her. And maybe just sort of like wrapping that up, and then we can take it into what has the journey looked like for you since April.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, absolutely. Look, if everything is, I think one of the most optimistic ways that it's important to look at life is that, actually, I don't remember where I first heard this. I don't know if it was from you guys or somebody on your show. But there's been there's been an acronym that I've started to use to describe this, JAFL.
That's not on.
Well, hold on. Let's hear it out. Okay. If it's really good, we'll take credit.
JAFL, JAFLE, just another fucking learning experience.
There you go. Yeah.
Yes. It's not us, but we've heard of that.
Yeah. Okay.
Or wait, hey, it is us.
You can turn everything. Oh yeah, right. No, thank you guys for coming up with that.
We'll take credit.
There is, it's just like looking at everything. You can spin. You should try to spin everything negative that happens into just another fucking learning experience, right? It's whatever you go through that is tough. Like, at least, hopefully, you take something out of it. I definitely take a lot out of what happened with us, and I'm continuing. And I thank Shannon for really pushing me, honestly, to open up our relationship, because I don't know where I would be right now if we hadn't done that. And it ultimately was not successful for the two of us together. But one of the things, though, she and I have just we spent about 6 months not communicating at all. And in just the last couple of weeks, I had to reach out to her because I needed her signature for something. And it started us texting a little bit. She really pushed it. I wanted to remain like non-communicative, and I was just kind of being stubborn, like, I'm not going to be your friend. And she just really pushed. She knows my buttons very well, and so she just kept texting me, asking me questions that she knew that I would want to answer, to open up conversation between the two of us. But what I found in talking to her in the last couple of weeks is she knows exactly what she did. She's very apologetic. She's very remorseful. She says, like, I know that I screwed you over, and that I made mistakes. At the end of the day, I think that we're starting to both come to understand that she pushed us, because that's an important part of the story. And I think we talked about it last time, is that I was perfectly content to just be non-monogamous in the swinging capacity. I'd done it for a long time. It was fine with me. I was perfectly satisfied to continue that way. She pushed us that if we were going to be together, we were going to have a completely open relationship. So she pushed us into polyamory. And then ultimately, I'm realizing now, and she's realizing now, that's not what she wanted. She was pushing us into that because the relationship that we had was not what she wanted, and she was searching for a way to make that work. I don't think she's not really in a non-monogamous relationship so she's still with this guy that she left me for ultimately. And they have a mostly monogamous relationship. I think that they're maybe starting to try to explore a little bit and see if that's what they want or what their comfort level is. But Shannon wants a family, and I don't. I had my marriage, I had a stepdaughter, and that failed. And during that marriage, like, we decided we were not going to have any more kids. I got a vasectomy. I'm not going to have any kids. And Shannon kind of went back and forth about that, being okay with her. And, she would go through long periods of time where she would feel just as much as I did that, we're selfish, hedonistic people, and we love going on fish tour and going on jam cruise. And we love those things too much to really have kids. But then she would have her moments of doubt about that and really feel like she wanted to be a mom. And I think ultimately that's a big part of what happened with us, is that those doubts maybe were getting stronger. She thought that going poly would be a way to satisfy the other things that she wanted from her relationship that we weren't having together. But ultimately, when she met somebody that maybe fit what she was looking for better, she realized that, and that made more sense to her. That, and I think that she thinks, at least right now, who knows what the future holds, but I think that she thinks that this relationship that she found is going to be, she's going to marry this person and have children, and it's going to be a much more traditional kind of relationship structure than anything that we would have ever had.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I think that I think at the end of the day, we were not right for each other, and we were having a hard time admitting that and figuring that out because we had so much fun together, probably.
Right, you're hanging on to the good so much, like the pieces that were good, without really diving in of like, oh no, these other pieces are not compatible. We're not compatible here. We're not ultimately happy in the relationship, but yet there's so many fun parts that make you're trying to figure out if you can make that worth it, make the relationship feel happy, and
Yeah. So, I mean, understanding that now and like having talked to her recently where she's really taken ownership of, what happened, and her part in that, I'm letting go of my anger, and, there's no point in holding on to it. We just think, like you said, unless you die together at the same time, then every relationship likely has its end. And, we were, ours might have been messier than I would have liked and hurt me in the moment more than I would have ever chosen. But ultimately, it's probably a very good thing for both of us.
Right. And I would imagine, right, even if you had tried to make monogamy work, right, if you two didn't know anything about non-monogamy, chances are, like you said, you were sort of incompatible in the long run anyway. And the non-monogamous piece, we've talked to people who sometimes say like, oh, well, it allowed us to remain together for X amount of extra time, or on the flip side, sometimes it has sped up the process, and maybe it's kind of hard to tell, but like, I think it's just right to blame polyamory for what happened is kind of tough, right? Like, you've both sort of discussed that.
Yeah, I don't do that. I don't blame polyamory for what happened. I think that I don't know if, when or if I would have gotten to exploring being poly if not for her pushing that. It's a good transition because, I'm not an expert yet in being polyamorous by any means, but I am certainly much more confident that it is me, and I'm finding a lot of success in that lifestyle and that life choice that I have to thank her for pushing me into it. Because when I was with my ex-wife and we were swinging, I always saw being poly as kind of the ultimate goal of evolved relationships, right? Like, as you start to deal with your jealousy and start to learn how fulfilling it can be to explore non-monogamous situations and relationships on any level, right? Even when you're just having fun, having sex with other people, with your partner. As you start to get better at that and really enjoy it, it's kind of impossible to not look towards like, well, if this is great and letting go of my jealousy to this amount has been great, how amazing would it be to just be at a place where you don't experience any jealousy? You only experience compersion. And you can be happy for your partner, whatever they do, whether it's having sex with someone, whether it's being in love with someone. And so I always kind of saw that as being the ultimate goal of being on a non-monogamous road. I didn't know or even think that I might ever be there, right? It's a goal, but I didn't know if I'd ever achieve that or even try. But
right.
I'm much closer to that now.
Mm-hmm. And maybe that leads, like, I want to go back a little bit, but right now, where do you feel you are?
I'm in a great place. The last 6 months has been not to say that this is why I'm in a great place now, but to give the background. The last 6 months, especially like the start of it after Shannon left, has been the sluttiest of my life. I've had a lot. I've been having a lot of fun. I've been meeting a lot of great people. To put it into context, like, the last 6 years I've been in non-monogamous relationships. So, certainly not any lack of sex or meeting new partners. But in the last 6 months, I have hooked up with as many different people as I did in the previous 6 years. So it's been a very active 6 months. and that's been an evolution, because at the beginning of that 6 months, it was very just, I would just say slutty. I was just meeting a lot of people. There was definitely an aspect of, getting over the last person by getting under the next person. And not that that's healthy, but that's certainly my pattern of dealing with breakups and hurt.
Hey, no judgment here.
Thank you.
Yeah, right.
But it was a process of learning. Like, it was the first time where I was like, okay, not only am I single and dating, but I'm poly now, and single and dating, and solo poly, and like this just gives me this whole new thing to explore, where I can meet people and just be honest with them. Like, even if we fall in love with each other, I'm not going to be monogamous to you. I'm still going to be dating other people. So, it's a freedom that I hadn't really experienced before. And, there was a fair amount of just really casual encounters at the beginning of this last 6 months that has evolved to having some really, really solid relationships now. And trying and phasing out, for the most part, the completely casual encounters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. Like, kind of owning it, right? Like, it was like you said, getting under somebody else to get over what you were working on, and that.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, that it's evolved, and you're finding that you're in a great space, and that these relationships take on a little bit of a different dynamic. And how has that gone? That, like, communicating to people openly and honestly about, like, hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, because we talk to a fair amount of people, and like the typically, if it's a couple, right, they experience this imbalance where the woman in the couple has like 1.5 billion messages on whatever dating app, and the guy has like 3, and there's this constant, like, why is it like this? And so how has that been going for you?
I honestly, I feel like I've tried to implement this with some of my single male friends who struggle a little bit. I feel like I should maybe be a dating coach. I feel like that might be a calling, because I don't know. It's very easy for me, and I've never had that experience. Like, I think, I don't remember if it came up on our last interview, but one of the challenges that Shannon and I had early on was that I think when she pushed for us to be poly and open up, she thought her phone was going to be ringing off the hook and that I might be sitting home, wondering what was going on. And it was not that way at all. And it wasn't because she's not beautiful and sexy. It was because she was not as comfortable meeting people. She wanted to start relationships and have sex with people that she already knew, like that she had crushes on, like guys from her billiards team that she mentioned a couple of times in the last interview. And I have always been very comfortable just putting myself out there and meeting new people. When she wasn't comfortable with like online dating and stuff, which is funny because ultimately the guy that she ended up meeting, she met on Field. But I was meeting tons of people on Field, tons of people on Facebook. And I've just always been comfortable with that. So what has it been like? I mean, it's been easy. It's been, I don't really have a hard time putting myself out there and meeting people.
And being honest about your like desire to what you're looking for.
Yeah. And that's been a big part of it. So I meet a lot of people in like Facebook poly groups and, in ways that it is already known that, we are poly. So and that's something I would say one takeaway I've had it go both ways where I basically had two people that I've started trying to date that weren't already poly. The first one should have maybe in some ways taught me a lesson about that, and that like, okay, be careful about getting involved with someone who thinks that they're going to make you monogamous, because that didn't work. But then again, one of my two, most, I'm still I'm confused about terminology, I guess, because of being solo poly at this point, because I have two what I would call primary relationships.
Mm-hmm.
But is that a thing? Can they both be primary relationships?
I think we struggle with labels ourselves, and I think it's really just a matter of what it feels like to you. We actually did an interview with a couple the other night who they were both describing, and they said it a few times, like we have multiple primary partners, and I know that sort of it just contradicts itself, but at the same time, like, to me, like, yeah, you have two really important partners in your life, or multiple really important partners in your life. So yeah, I don't know, we're pretty easygoing on terminology. I'm sure somebody out there is listening.
One of those was like started off the same way, that she is open about the fact that she thought that when she started dating me, she was going to be able to convince me to be monogamous.
Mm-hmm.
And I have actually convinced her to open up, and now she's dating other people and starting to, have success with that and learn how to do it. So I'm glad I didn't take and make a rule from the first time that it crashed and burned and was not successful. Like, okay, don't ever do that again.
Right.
Because sometimes somebody's going to be, I think, if somebody thinks they're going to convince me to be monogamous, they're in for a rude awakening probably, but that they might, find themselves being poly instead.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm just, I'm curious, you talked about this a little bit too, but just dig in a little bit more. You had said previously, like, you weren't interested in poly. You were like very happy with the swinging.
Mm-hmm.
And then you went down this poly route with Shannon that was difficult, that had a lot of hurdles. And yet now you're very much like, I like this. This is me. This is who I am. And do you mind talking about that journey a little bit, that shift in mindset for you?
Yeah, I think that I was scared of it. Like I said, I think that I always, since I ever started on the non-monogamous journey in general, I've always looked at this being the ultimate state of evolution with relationships and emotions. And I just felt like I will probably never be ready to be there. I will probably never be able to handle my jealousy enough to do that. And when I opened myself up to it, and a big part of it is all the books that I read. I think, just like really like gaining a deeper understanding of the benefits of being at that level and what it really can do for you and allow you to do in your life to be able to have multiple fully loving, fully committed, deep relationships with people and not closed off to only having one of those at a time. It's incredibly powerful, and I think that why I would have not tried it, or it would have been a long time before I'd gotten to a point of trying it. I needed somebody to push me into it because I was afraid that I couldn't handle it, that I couldn't do it. And I was, and once I started, I realized, you know what, I'm actually pretty fucking good at this.
Yeah, and what was that journey of dealing with like, it sounds like jealousy was one of the big things that you were concerned about. And I mean, there's reading books, but then it's like anything, right? You can read all the books in the world, but when you get out into the real world, it's a different game.
Theoretical versus experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I learned pretty quickly on, like I was saying, with what happened with Shannon and I think I learned pretty quickly that I could deal with it. That it's not the end of the world. You might get overwhelmed with jealousy once in a while, but you have the ability to deal with it. You have the ability to process it. The first step is taking ownership of it and making that decision that your jealousy is not the other person's problem, right? It's not them doing something to you, especially if you're still operating within the boundaries that you've communicated and set, that if they're following the guidelines that you have set forth, they're not doing anything wrong. If they're doing something that's making you feel jealous and it's not crossing a boundary, then that's on you to figure out how to deal with it. That's on you to process it and not take it out on them, right? And then, they say that jealousy, the problem with jealousy is not feeling it, it's how you react to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
taking responsibility for your own emotion.
Right.
I mean,
right, 100%.
And that takes practice too, right? Like you don't get it the first time, or maybe you do, but then maybe you don't get it the second time, right? Like it's one of those things that you're ever evolving. And I think something that Emma and I learned is, at least I would say I learned, is I felt for a long time as if I didn't really have that jealousy. And I've learned in new relationships, I do still have that. And so that's an interesting thing, right? Where I don't really have that with Emma, but I have it with other people. And so it's one of those things that's always evolving and coming up in different ways. And it's it's really interesting. So
I love that you just told me that, because I think I mentioned in one of my emails to you guys, like, I wish that you talked more about yourselves. I think you've gotten a little bit away in all these podcasts and how long you've been doing it from talking about your own experiences as much. And I love hearing about that.
Well, we weave it in where it's important.
We do. We're not strangers to struggling with jealousy and our own insecurities and our own emotions. It's not always easy. By any means.
No, and I'm still. I mean, I haven't like conquered it by any means, but I've learned, I think, the important lessons of. The most important lessons of how of the fact that, like, don't freak out. You can deal with it. Just like take a step back, give yourself a chance to process it. Don't take it out on your partner. I mean, it still comes up. I have partners that, one of my main partners is maybe that's a better way of saying it, main, and rather than primary, because I have main partners that I have committed relationships with, and then I have partners that I'm still working on developing where we're going to be, right?
Yeah.
And I say, and one of them is long distance, and so I struggle with not being there and hearing about what's going on with her dating life and the new people that she meets and questioning my own importance in that, and can I can I be as important as these other people when I live 1,000 miles away? And that's another important lesson about jealousy, right? Is once you like really understand, once you start analyzing your jealousy and where it's coming from, you really quickly understand that it's not on the other person. It's very rarely like about what the other person is doing. It's your own insecurity about where about being replaced, for me usually, right? And I have reasons to be afraid of that, and that's something that that now I have this whole level of like, okay, I am committed to being poly. I am committed to exploring these relationships in this way, but I have to deal with the fact that I have, in my first foray into being completely poly and being in a polyamorous relationship, I was replaced. I was not good enough. I was found to be lacking in areas that my partner decided that they would rather have someone else to fill things better and get rid of me. So I have to deal with that now, and that certainly comes up, in my jealousy with other partners. I have to like really figure out like, okay, I'm feeling jealous because I'm really, more than anything, I'm just worried about I'm going to be replaced, and I have to learn to trust my partners when they tell me that that's not happening, that they are committed to making things work with me, even if they feel strongly for other people. Mm-hmm. So
and I think it's right. First of all, like you said, like that's sort of the ultimate fear, right? When people start to open up their relationship, is like, well, if we open this up, my partner's going to leave me. Mm-hmm. And you face that fear that basically the very first time. I think maybe the thing that you got to experience too is that you've come out of it okay, right? And so that's not your ideal situation. Like, well, I don't want to get replaced 100 times, but that if it happens, you can recover, and it's not fun or easy, but you've gotten to face that fear kind of head on. And so I think there's still some value in that, another opportunity to learn.
Right. And the other piece of like, I know it's a jaffle. The other piece I was just going to comment on about jealousy and like taking responsibility for your own insecurities, for your own emotion. But part of that is also identifying your own needs to work through those emotions and then communicating that to your partner. And to like, you are in a partnership, right? Like you should be able to work together to work through those emotions. But there's a fine balance there to figure out. You don't want to put all your emotion onto your partner, but there's a balance of it's okay to ask and communicate your needs in a relationship, and that was my point.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so as you've continued to navigate the solo poly world, and do you have a sort of a feel for like what you think might be like the ideal dynamic for you? Is it like 7 primary partners in quotes and a couple of casual partners? Like what is the
that's a great question, because I am trying to figure out like what is the point of being polysaturated, right? Because like what does that look like? Where is my most comfortable level? Because I'm probably overextending myself just in general right now. So I have the two, my two main partners, and I have kind of a comet relationship that is an ex-partner from many years ago who's now going through a divorce, and so she's coming back into my life. Our relationship right now is more of like a support standpoint. I'm trying to just help her through what she's going through, but she's been important to me for a really long period of time, many years, even though we've gone many years at a time without even speaking. But and then I have I'm exploring kind of a kitchen table poly scenario for the first time, because I'm dating a woman who's in a poly marriage, and I went over to dinner at their house and had dinner. I actually we had like an afternoon date, the two of us, and then I came back for dinner and hung out with her and her husband and their son, and that was really cool. very new for me. So I'm kind of like exploring, that dynamic. And then I have a couple of like married friends with benefits. So my my dance card is very full. And I'm trying to figure. Oh, and I have, and then along with that, I have a partner that I am like in love with, that I had asked, can I fall in love with you? Because this was actually somebody that I started dating when Shannon and I were still together, that Shannon kind of had some issues with. Actually, the one that I mentioned, that we weren't having sex right away. And it was more of like an emotional connection without that. We couldn't see each other. We still can't. She is polysaturated, and
Right.
she doesn't have time for me, and she wants to, and I want her to, and that's something that I'm trying to navigate, and seeing the example of how that works and how it makes me feel, that I'm like, I've fallen for somebody who really doesn't have time for me in their life, and they're trying to make time, but it's a struggle.
Right.
Makes me realize like the importance of not letting myself get into that situation with other people. And how do I manage that? I don't know. I'm big part of what I'm trying to learn about and manage and work on right now for myself.
Yeah. Well, I want to just say, like, I have a lot of appreciation for like your transparency on what you've navigated, because like it hasn't been a smooth route, and it's
Right.
there's been swinging, there's been poly, there's been breakups, there's been a lot of stuff, and you're very optimistic, and you take away value in all of it. And I think you're constantly like you said, you've got a really full dance card, but now you're recognizing that like you've been on the flip side, and that doesn't feel good. So maybe it's not as fair to like ramp it all up if you can't keep people what they're wanting out of it.
Yeah.
And so I think there's just like so much, like, I don't know, you're kind of drinking from a fire hose this last 6 months. And
Definitely.
and I just appreciate like you being open and transparent about it. It's super valuable, and
Oh, well, thanks.
and it's difficult, but also like rewarding in a lot of ways from what we can tell.
It is.
Yeah.
Can I touch briefly on some of the like more like fun stuff of the drinking from the fire hose before?
Yes.
Before
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
have to go?
Absolutely.
So I well, first of all, so I went to Vegas and went to my first actual sex club. I had shortly after everything happened with COVID and Shannon and I splitting up, I had a girl that I went to high school with reach out to me on Facebook, that like I didn't have a relationship with in high school. We went to junior high and high school together, and she saw the stuff that I was going through on Facebook with my wife passing away, with going through a breakup, with having COVID. And she reached out, and the next thing I knew, we were going to Vegas together for a weekend. And I went to the Green Door. And
We've heard of it.
so we have like great swinger clubs here in Denver, and I've never been to one. I've never been to the Scarlet Ranch, which is the famous big one, because my ex-wife didn't want to go. She preferred more intimate scenarios with people that we knew. Shannon and I talked a lot about going, but ultimately we were trying to get just another couple that we knew to go, so that we would have like some comfort level of having friends there if we felt uncomfortable with it. So over the last 6 years, I've had multiple conversations with different partners about going and checking it out, and just never made it. But I've heard a lot about it. I know a lot of people that go regularly, so I know kind of what to expect. And I didn't think about the difference. And this is going to kind of get into blooper territory, which I know you guys love.
Perfect.
And I didn't really think about the difference between a swinger club and a sex club. The difference is single men.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
The difference is that from what I was expecting and understanding, there aren't a ton of single men at these places, because I'm coming at it from like hearing about the Scarlet Ranch, where it's heavily discouraged to come as a single man. Whereas you go to a sex club, not a swinger club, and there are a ton of single dudes there. And I found myself in my first like club experience not being prepared for that fact and being very, very thrown off by the fact that like, okay, I'm here with a partner and we are trying to have fun and have sex in front of other people. And there are like 10 single men in a circle jerk around us.
just waiting for an opening.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
That was something that I was not comfortable with or prepared for, and really threw me off. So that's the first story I wanted to share with a blooper. The second one is much more fun and exciting. I got to plan my first orgy, which not just my first orgy that I planned, but my first orgy that I went to, that I had been a part of.
Wow.
Because I'd never been a part of like a group more than 5 people, I think, like 2 couples and an extra. It had been like, the largest group dynamic that I had really been part of. I know this is, probably sounds really like silly to you guys with your desire experiences and everything, but
well, we're not as crazy as we seem.
Oh, sure. Yeah, right. But so I was actually on Dan Savage about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I called in with a question because I was, planning this, and I had a question for him specifically about like the place that I rented. The venue had like a projector on the wall, and I was like, what do I play? What like video content do you play at an orgy? Because like I don't want to just play porn, right? Like I want something sexy and erotic, but artsy and obscure at the same time. And he completely, it was a little disappointing. He completely missed the point of my question and was just like, yeah, don't play porn. You don't want people just looking at porn. You're trying to create the sexiness there. And I was like, I know, that's why I called. That's what I was asking. But I also like threw out there a term he shut down, and I definitely got it from your show. There was a young woman who was the captain of the, I think, Princeton orgy team.
Yeah, the Yale Orgy Club.
The Yale Orgy Club. And I think she used the term orginizer.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I picked that up, and I love it, and I tried to use that on my call with Dan Savage, and he shut it down. He was like, "Listen, I don't think that's going to go anywhere. I wouldn't expect that to take off."
What?
Well,
oh man!
If we ever get to throw down with Uncle Dan, we'll straighten his ass out.
Yeah.
I wouldn't arm wrestle him, but yeah.
And so then I think a funny like blooper of how like how funny everything, like it's such a small world in the lifestyle, right? It gets like I'm struck by that, like especially when you start narrowing it down into subcultures within the subculture. Like Shannon and I talked a lot about our music passion and jam crews and fish. Well, so the orgy that I planned was after a fish show, and it was only people that were going to the fish show. So it was like, and I had this really funny experience of just like having my mind blown with the smallness of the scene when there was this woman. I had, one of the rules that I had set, maybe partially because of my experience at the Green Door, was no single men, right? Like we're trying to create a vibe, we're trying to create a dynamic here, and like that's only going to happen with a good ratio of male to female. And a good friend of mine had invited the woman that he was trying to invite as his date. When it came down to it, was having second thoughts, and he asked me to talk to her and help convince her that it was going to be okay. What she was really having at the time, what she was having concerns about, was COVID and having an orgy in the resurgence of the Delta variant and COVID, which is a reasonable concern. But I felt like I was being even 3 times as safe and conscious as the fish show that we were all going to, right? Which was just a vaccination or a negative test in 48 hours. And I was like, well, I'm only inviting vaccinated people. You have to have a negative test within 48 hours, a PCR test. And we were going to do over-the-counter tests at the door. We ended up deciding not to do that because we felt like it was enough, the other two levels of COVID security. But anyway, I had this really funny experience with this woman I'm talking to, trying to convince just come to be his date so that he doesn't have to not go. All of a sudden, we started exchanging nudes and sexting, and then we were going on a date, and I was out with her on a date, and it had moved from her being concerned about COVID to, I don't know if I can come now because I have another partner who lives in New York who's coming to these shows now, and he's going to be staying with me for the weekend. And I know the single man policy, so I know that I can't probably come with two men. And I was like, well, it's fine. We'll find this first friend, somebody else to bring. You should still come, bring this guy, tell me more about this guy. And I quickly realize that the guy that she's talking about, who lives in New York, is Shannon's ex-boyfriend.
From the last episode.
Yeah. If you guys remember the boyfriend that she talks about finding out that he had cheated on her, and then, putting her in the scenario where she decided to have the revenge threesome.
Right,
this is not boyfriend.
Wow.
What a small world.
And I was like, actually, you're right. You can't come anymore because you can't bring him. I'm sorry.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I know we're running out of time.
Yeah.
And not to be abrupt with our ending, but I do have one final question.
Sure.
What did you put on the projector?
Well, I did not know how long it might take Dan to get to my call. So I called I specifically called like a week in advance before the next episode would be coming out before the orgy. And when I listened to that episode and then my question was not answered, I was like, okay, well, he didn't get it. He answered it 2 weeks later. So it was like 2 weeks after the orgy had happened. He didn't really, like I said, answer my question anyway. So it wouldn't have really helped. But I ended up being incredibly stressed about the party and the prep that day. And I had taken on a lot. And when it came down to it, when we got there, I ran out of time in the afternoon that we were setting up before the fish show. And I ran out of time to figure out that part. So when we got there after the show, I was like, I am not doing anything else to prepare. I'm having a good time. I'm letting myself relax. And what the owner of the place had left on the projector was just Netflix trailers. So we ended up in not having any sexy content at all. We ended up having Netflix trailers playing on the projector the whole time, which nobody was paying attention to, so it was fine. But there were a couple of funny comments throughout the evening, like, are we going to put anything else on besides these Netflix trailers? And I was like, nope. We're not. I'm not dealing with it.
No, that's just is what it is. It's just going to be background noise. Yeah.
Well, I, for one, blame Dan Savage, and if he wants to defend himself, he can come on our show and do so. No, yeah. I'm totally joking, but you got to find some way to get him on, right?
I know,
we might as well challenge him to a duel,
right? Or about the origin.
Yeah, we haven't tried those.
Organizer, yes.
Yeah. So,
well, thank you, Dave, for coming on and sharing this last year evolution on your journey. We really appreciate it. And yeah, just thank you.
Thanks for having me again. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely appreciate it. And have a fantastic day. And
maybe we'll hear another update in a year.
Yeah, we'll get the 3-year update.
Let me know.
All right.
I'm not going anywhere.
Perfect. Well, have a fantastic day, and thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. Take care.
And we're back. A huge thank you to Dave for reaching out to us again, wanting to come back on the show and sharing your story and being vulnerable with us. It means a lot, and we're very grateful.
Yeah, a huge amount of gratitude for that. And to be honest, he was pretty nervous about it because, as he talked about, like, Shannon wasn't here to defend herself. And so he was really trying to give her a fair shake and really kind of, like you said, hold your judgment till the end. And, they're definitely in a better place than they were. So we love hearing that. And again, thank you for that. And Shannon, if you happen to be listening, thank you as well.
Yes.
We appreciate it.
Yes, very much so.
So we also have a couple of updates.
We do.
In the intro, we weren't sure about the holiday situation for December on our meet and greets.
We wanted to make sure our meet and greets didn't fall on December holidays.
We have some exciting news. There are some holidays that we conflict with. December 9th is National Llama Day.
Yes.
And International Anti-Corruption Day.
And Christmas Card Day.
And we feel pretty confident that we can work those into the theme of the meet and greet. The other exciting one is December 17th, also some holidays.
Yes, guess what? It's National Ugly Sweater Day.
And National Maple Syrup Day, National Underdog Day, and
Wright Brothers Day.
The Wright Brothers Day, Pan American Aviation Day.
Yeah.
So we got a lot of things. There's going to be a lot of themes.
There's going to be definitely an ugly sweater theme on the 17th meet and greet.
And we're going to have a maple syrup chugging contest.
Ooh, how big is the container?
A gallon.
Oh my gosh. Well, we'll see how this goes. Anyway, if you're interested in joining the virtual meet and greets, now that we've plugged them all, go to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, click on the community events tab, and you can sign up there. Again, these are open to anyone. You just need to be open-minded.
And have a llama.
And have a llama in an ugly sweater.
Yes.
And they're pay what feels good. So please, we'd love to have you come join us.
Hey, did you know, fun fact about Finn, a fun Finn fact.
Fun Finn fact.
My college roommate was a llama farmer.
I did know that.
I know you knew that.
Because he was one of my friends, too.
He was. So if you're listening, you can join us for National Llama Day.
I don't remember what it said.
Let's make it international. Because we'll have people from around the globe. All right.
It was national.
National. We're taking it international.
That's the December 9th.
All right, enough of that. The other thing we wanted to say is if you are getting back out into the world and meeting people in person, we would love it if you would join us in being sexual health advocates. And the way that Emma and I do that is we use a service called stdcheck.com to get tested for STIs so we can intelligently and informatively talk to our partners about our status. So we've been using this service for many years, at least a few. Mm-hmm. We love it. It's amazing. It's low cost. It's simple, straightforward, private. All of the things that you want in your STI testing service, STD Check does. And if you use the links on our website, it saves you $10 and it helps support the show. So we thank you in advance for not only supporting the show, but supporting the sex positive community.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
And you don't need to bring your llama.
To STD checking.
No, to STD checking.
Oh boy. No, that would be pretty hilarious though.
I mean, you can, if you take your llama, please send us a photo.
Yeah, we'd love that.
Yes.
Actually, if you just use the service at all, please send us a voicemail or an email and let us know. We'd love to hear how it works for you.
Yeah, we know we know a lot of you are using it, but we don't get a ton of feedback on how much you love it. So we love it. We'd love to hear if you love it.
Yes.
There's a lot of love in that sentence.
A lot of love. I think with that, are we good to go?
Well, next week we have another interview.
Yeah.
Emma's a little chomping at the bit.
Next week, we have an interview with Judy and Eldon.
Yes, this is an awesome conversation. It's beautiful, and we're excited to bring it to you next week. And we hope you all come back, and we will see you in about 7 days.
Yep. Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.